I'll start off by saying thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story with you. I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person and to share in the moment with you, but I thought I would just take this opportunity to share my story with you through video. So thank you again for inviting me, and thank you for sharing in this moment with me. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Simone Walters, and I'm from a community called Jane and Finch in Toronto, Ontario. Jane and Finch is a neighborhood improvement area that had been sort of pointed out by the city of Toronto. One of 32 neighborhood improvement areas, which means that we deal with a lot of poverty, gun violence. There's a lot of housing projects, and just a lot of neglect in terms of resources and so forth. I was raised there, lived there for 40 years, had 3 kids there, lost my youngest son, my youngest son Taj there as well. But one of the greatest neighborhoods that I could have ever hoped to be a part of. So in 2011, I started my journey by entering into the Child and Youth Worker program. And initially, I had not thought of becoming a child and youth worker, but I was actually given, the opportunity to do so through someone who had recommended that they thought that I would be good in that field. My field of choice was to become a nurse, and I had started the practical nursing program and transitioned to the Child and Youth Worker program, in which I'm glad I did. Tragically, in 2013, as I mentioned, my son Taj was shot and killed. He was 15 years old. He was shot and killed across the street from where we lived. He lived 2 weeks in hospital and later died from brain damage. 2 weeks after that, his 2 friends, Kwame and O'Shea, were getting ready to come to his funeral and were also shot and killed in front of their homes, in which you could imagine was triple tragic for us. And at that time I had thought to myself, I wasn't upset at the person who had done this. I wanted to understand where they were coming from. I wanted to understand what would have led them to have been able to shoot and kill my son. As I had heard it was a young person, and I wanted to be able to meet this young person and let him know that I was not upset, but that I felt empathy for him, and that I wanted to create a relationship with him. Also at the time, I did not even realize that it was a form of restorative justice. And so I set out to work with a number of stakeholders. One of the really large stakeholders was the local uniform in our area, local 112, community pastors, one of the mothers who had also lost their son 6 months before mine, and the young people of the community, to create a mural that would have showcased 12 youth that had died previously, 10 years prior. And we worked alongside a number of organizations as well, was also a part of that. And we created a mural with the help of the young people in the community that housed now 12 young people who had passed, one of them being a young girl who had left behind a 2-year-old or 4-year-old son. And when we created this, her son had come to us and said, my grandmother had told me that my mother was in heaven, but now I know that she's not in heaven, she's right here on the wall. And he would come and sit at that mural each and every morning to spend time with his mother. And at that time we knew that we had done something great for the community and for those who had lost loved ones, which we were very proud of. In 2014, I decided that I would return to my studies and entered into my my child and youth worker program studies once more, and given the opportunity at that time to immerse myself in the social innovation hub that was created by Natalie and Zuby at the time, and later on added Rick Kelly also to that social innovation hub. And for that social innovation hub, we were asked to create a project that would address social justice issues. And I had known that, my prior idea to create a hub or a community center for my community was the one that I would have worked on. And throughout the process, I was able to connect with Rick, who had opened up this restorative justice aspect to me, something I had never heard about before, but that I thought would have been a grounding for this community hub. And so I thought of the Jane Finch Restorative Hub. At the time, we had also created a sort of name for my son, in which we would also name this hub, because his name is Taj, Tahj. We thought that a fitting name would have been Towards a Higher Journey, which would be the acronym for his name. And that was exciting for me, because I knew that I would have done something in honor of his death, something positive, something that would have addressed issues in the community, something that would have looked at how we can have a safe space for our young people to go to, a safe space for them to grow, a safe space for them to have families and recreational funds and so forth. And so at that point, I also was able to do number of networking, that I was able to talk to politicians in the area and other organizations and funders and so forth. I did that through the help of Rick, Natalie, and Zuby, who introduced me to a number of stakeholders that I had sort of spoke to about this idea that I had. And through that correspondence, I was connected to a group in Jane Finch who was already working on creating a space for the community. And so we were offered an opportunity to sort of speak our truth before the large organization, government arm Metrolinx, who is responsible for creating light rail transit through the city. And they had bought a large space in our community, only space that we had left in the community, really large open lands. And so we did an ask before them that they would give us a piece of that land to create a community center. And so at the end of that bid, we had received a 32-meter setback of land frontage that would allow us to build our community hub, which we were extremely excited about, because we knew that this hub needed to be central to the community. It was the only central land to the community, because we do face issues in our community with crossing boundaries, where young people from the north side cannot cross over to the south side. And so this was the only space that would have been able to address that issue, where youth would be able to gather safely. And so we were excited about that win, and we had begun to build out what that hub would then look like. I was also given the opportunity by Rick to present this idea at the IIRP, the 26th edition in Aurelia, 2016 edition, sorry, in Aurelia, and 2017 in Ottawa, and was able to receive feedback from others who were working on restorative practice ideas in their own places and spaces, and I was able to get feedback on how it would be accepted to have this hub with a restorative approach, and it had never been thought of before. It was a new idea, and so many people took to it and thought that it would be great. And so I am now continuing to work on that idea to build that out for programming for the actual space to look like and feel like restorative justice circles. How do we approach trauma and neglect through circles that wouldn't necessarily look like circles, but would look like and feel like a restorative practice circle. In 2016, I was hired on by the Toronto Community Benefits Network, who works on negotiating jobs for historically disadvantaged communities along the infrastructure projects within the province. And so, again, we'd be working with Metrolinx to negotiate jobs for our young people. We were able to win a 10% declaration, which means that 10% of all working hours would have been given to historically disadvantaged groups within priority neighborhoods, which we were also excited about that win, because that would have given an opportunity for young people to take up jobs within well-established unions, with benefits, with high pay grades, and that would address a number of poverty issues within our community. And so I had done that job for 1 year, and then I was approached by the Duke Heights BIA, the Business Improvement Area, and the Osgoode Hall Law School, which is one of the largest universities in Toronto, to become a community impact coordinator to work on a number of youth projects, a number of projects that will look at how we can incorporate community benefit agreements in anchor institutions such as the university. How would the university roll out a procurement strategy that would be able to support the surrounding community in which a number of universities sit. And so I am now working through that project with the university and with the Business Improvement Area, also looking at how we can support businesses to be able to grow, that they would be able to bid for these large contracts as infrastructure projects come in and out of the city. In which we are also excited about, because that would give opportunity for a number of people to grow their businesses, to be able to sell their businesses and be able to bid for these large contracts, again addressing poverty and a number of other issues that our communities face. A couple months ago, the Toronto Community Benefits Network was awarded $1.2 million to work on a black strategy for Black youth within the community. And so we're looking at how we can support young people in terms of getting those jobs and being able to keep those jobs through social supports, financial supports, mentoring, and so forth, and which we will also implement restorative approach to that mentoring. And that's another project that we have just begun that we are excited about, because we know how delicate our young people are and how much support we need to give our young people in these communities to be able to survive and thrive to better lives. And so for me, I have been dedicated to this work since my son passed. It is my lifelong work. It is what I enjoy doing, is what I will continue to do for a number of reasons, because I know that our young people need to have us do the work with them, or else, we will have a number of deaths in which I have seen within 2 years 6 young men who have lost their lives unnecessarily to gun violence because of issues that we face in our communities, neglect, and so forth. And for me, every child has the ability to write their life story, but without members of the community who are committed to making a change, many of their stories will end in tragedy. Though we may not be able to reach all youth, we are determined not to give up on any of them, and will therefore continue our work towards a higher journey. I thank you for having me once more, and I hope that this has helped you to understand some of the issues that we face here and why we do the work we do. Thank you, and take care.